a couple of follow-up questions before we move to discussion. And you said that the currency adjustment, the devaluation brought a lot of benefits to the current account. It's good that we may have a balanced current account this year, which we didn't. I think the last one was 2004 when we had the current account surplus. But do you think that further devaluation will bring more benefits, or there will be more costs? So what do you think will be the economic consequences? Because the hryvnia actually adjusted very sharply. Hryvnia adjusted very sharply, and it's 70%, and it could be quite damaging for maybe for the banking system or other indicators.
Of course, it's quite damaging. It's not only quite damaging; it's a real danger. And we do not. First of all, there is no any fundamental aspect right now for further devaluation. What was that? As I told you before, we have absolutely balanced current account forecast, even using the different exchange rate, which indicated in our budget right now, because we, together with Ministry of Finance, we have absolutely the same, agreed for the same macroeconomic indicators because of IMF program. And I still believe that it's a more behavioral right now movement of currency and not linked with all these fundamentals. Of course, for banking system we need stability because we can clean up whatever we can, but at the same time only macro stability will bring some real stability to the banking sector. That's why macro stability is our main.
And the banking system, how much time do you think it will take to fully clean up the system?
That's why I told that we are not in the beginning of this process. We're already in the finish line of this process. But again, if we not stabilize the macro situation in our country, if we will not see the GDP growth in our country, you know that stability will be very good.
Okay, thank you very much. And let me introduce the panel. So next to Valery is Ivan Miklas, so you know him already. Now he's introduced. The only thing I would like to say to congratulate Ivan with being appointed as advisor to the Finance Ministry. It's yesterday an official announcement. So I think it's a good addition to the new team, really. So next to Ivan. Next to Ivan is Jerome. Again, no need to introduce. Jerome is the resident representative of the IMF office in Ukraine and is very much knowledgeable of what's going on everywhere. And next to Jerome is Nicholas Baruch from the European Commission. Nicholas is the head of the Trade and Economic section, so he came to Ukraine for this position in mid-2012, and before that he worked for a long time in the EU Commission headquarters in Brussels, but he covered EU-Russia trade relationship. And next to Nicholas is Sergei Akuner, who is the head of the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development. So Sergei is also for quite a long time here in Ukraine, and EBRD is actually the biggest investor in Ukraine's private sector. So yeah, so also a very important component now for the economy. And actually, my first question would be to Jerome, because Valeria described very nicely the MBU commitments under the program, and now the program is longer and deeper. And can you please give us a brief? What is new in this program, and what do you expect from other authorities, from the government, from the parliament? What are the key things here?
Good morning. Thank you very much for inviting us to this event. Just a few words first on the program and the announcement which was made last week. We announced a staff-level agreement for a new program, which is an extended fund facility for 4 years, for an amount of roughly $17.5 billion. It's important to stress that this is what we call a staff level agreement. It is basically the result of our discussions and the discussions of the mission that came to Ukraine. This is undergoing review in our management and will have to be approved by the board of the IMF. And subsequently to that, we will be able to publish the report on the request and to disburse first tranche. But it's important to stress that this is a staff level agreement, and until the board is meeting, the details of the agreement are not always viable. You cannot prejudge a decision. I think, as our managing director has said, it's an ambitious program, it's a tough program, and it's a program which is not without risk. That being said, we think it's a realistic program, and if implemented effectively, could represent a turning point for Ukraine. There are different reasons why we think this strategy would succeed. As you know, we have been in discussion with the authorities, with the NBU, but also with the government on this new program for a few weeks already, and we had intense discussions. The first part, I think, is that we have seen a strong commitment to reform, and that is encouraging for us. That should be encouraging for board members. And this despite the very challenging environment, including a conflict on the territory of Ukraine. The authorities and the government, in particular, have maintained a strong fiscal discipline in 2014. That was not easy in such a context. The deficit was 4.6% of GDP, instead of a target of 5.8% of GDP. But importantly, the Ukrainian authorities have broken two taboos which have been hindering the implementation of IMF programs in the past, and in particular the one in 2008 and the one in 2010. That is that they have adopted a flexible exchange rate regime. That has always been an issue that we have been discussing with the Ukrainian authorities for a long time. And second, they have also started to tackle the issues in the energy sector, which has always been a difficult topic. They have last year in the spring significantly increased household gas prices by 56% and heating prices by 40%. Unfortunately, the environment where we had more exchange rate depreciation also meant that the accounts of Naftogaz couldn't improve as quickly as expected. But this is an important first step. As the governor mentioned, I think it's important to stress that, and it's not perhaps recognized enough. The NBU has been at the forefront of reforms, and that means, in my view, that as an institution it has started to reform itself ahead of many parts of the Ukrainian government. We have undertaken an important reform of the NBU itself, and it's an important signal that things are changing, and we have seen that things have been changing because the dialogue that we have with the NBU is much better, much quicker. We have much more access to the data. Of course, the picture of the previous imbalances emerges also as there is an effort for more transparency. So, as the governor has mentioned, the problems in the banking sector are long-standing and are not new. We know them better now, and we have the possibility to tackle them. And again, the MBU has to be commended for this effort to, in particular, to address weak banks. And this is not an easy process, but I think they have demonstrated that and for us it is very important. The second reason why we think that this program has this strategy has a good chance to succeed is that we have discussed with the government and with the MBU a number of front-loaded actions in the program. That includes, as the governor has mentioned, sizable energy tariff increases. This is of course difficult to implement, but this is highly needed. The idea is to go back to cost recovery by the spring of 2017. As you know, on the household side, we are well below cost recovery. So that means a significant effort, which is front-loaded, but is also gradual. And that effort will be compensated by an increase of subsidies which go directly to households, and that is also should be also accommodated in the budget. But it's an important issue. It's although natural gas is not included in the fiscal numbers, it is a fiscal issue. It is a governance issue. It is a balance of payments issue. So it's really important to tackle that. That includes front-loaded measures on bank restructuring. That includes measures on state-owned enterprises. That includes measures on the anti-corruption and judicial reform agenda. The third part where we think there is a strong chance for this program to succeed is that we have an increased external support. So on the side of the IMF, the request for an extended fund facility was viewed positively for a number of reasons. First of all, because it basically an EFF compared to a standby arrangement provides more time, and we also conscious that the balance of payments problems, although the adjustment has been relatively quick. I mean, we have to remember that in 2013 the current account deficit was still 8% of GDP, so the adjustment is relatively quick. That being said, because of the impact of the conflict in particular and its intensification during the summer, there was substantial also financing needs which have emerged largely because of a lack of confidence, both externally and domestically. But basically the idea is that this new extended fund facility will provide more funding, more time to implement reforms, because we also aware that there is a number of structural reforms that needs to be taken, and that is not only on anti-corruption and the business environment, but that means also structural changes in the energy sector, in the fiscal and the banking sector. And more time doesn't mean that more time doesn't need delaying reforms. In fact, we have agreed that that reforms would be largely front-loaded. And it also provides better financing terms in terms of repayment schedule for Ukraine. These IMF resources will be complemented by bilateral and multilateral financing support. There are a number of countries which have committed financing to help Ukraine and support its reform agenda. We have a number of multilateral institutions. For us, it is important to have those financing assurances in order to present a program that can be supported by IMF resources at the board. This is actually a requirement for us to explain when we identify financing needs, we to explain to our board how these financing needs would be met. In addition, as the Ukrainian government has previously announced, it intends also to hold consultations with holders of sovereign debt with a view to improving medium-term sustainability, debt sustainability. So from these various sources taken together, which basically would allow to meet the estimated financing needs, and it's of course it's an estimate for the next 4 years, estimated financing needs of additional financing needs of $40 billion. These different sources are expected to meet these estimated financing needs. So just to conclude, because I've been talking a bit long. You know, we are aware that it's a program that is subject to risks, and first and foremost geopolitical risk. But we also see that we have a strong commitment, that it's a comprehensive and reform package, and strongly front-loaded. So, thank you.
If I may sum up, it's more time.
Yeah, more time, but not delay.
Yeah, that's a good way to express it. Ivan, what do you think about the program? You heard about all the details now. Do you think it's kind of sufficiently big and sufficiently deep to stabilize the economy and really to promote reforms? What's based on your experience and what you know about Ukraine already?
Yeah, thank you. I think the program is inevitable minimum what is necessary to do, and also inevitable minimum what Ukraine needs in the sources. First important point is that what I have mentioned yesterday, very important will be the ownership of reforms, to understand not only for the government but also for the people, but especially for the government, that this is not important and necessary measures and program because somebody is pushing from outside, like IMF for instance, but it is because it is necessary minimum necessary changes for improving situation in Ukraine for Ukrainians. This first very, very important point. I mean even crucially important point. Second point is that it will be of course not enough. It will be necessary to do much, much more. Even it will be not enough for the macroeconomic stabilization and fiscal consolidation. Macroeconomic stabilization and fiscal consolidation are necessary precondition for improving anything. Mrs. Governor just mentioned that also this is precondition for cleaning up banking system and to have sustainable situation in the banking system. But not only. In this regard, I'm convinced, deeply convinced, that much quicker steps are needed. Because macroeconomic stabilization and fiscal consolidation finally is about confidence inside of the country, but also from the outside. If we are speaking about consolidation, really country needs desperately as soon as possible this stabilization. One of the problem is that because what is macroeconomic stabilization? What are necessary preconditions? Firstly, of course, it is fiscal, reduction of fiscal deficit, but not only, also reduction of the share of public expenditures to the GDP, reduction of the size of the state in this regard. Secondly, it is responsible and sustainable monetary policy, and then thirdly, it is cleaning the banking system. Problem is that Ukraine has too high unsustainable size of the state, of the public expenditures to GDP. As I know, last year it was about more than 50%, 52, 53% public expenditures as shared to GDP. Comparable countries, I mean transition countries like Baltics or Slovakia, which are more successful as others, have less than 40%. There's a huge difference. Of course, this difference is impossible to achieve or change during 1-2 years, and not only by reduction of expenditure, but also by increasing of growth, increasing of denominator in this. The problem is that without having macroeconomic stability, without consolidating the macro conditions, it will be impossible to increase growth and then to reduce also share of public expenditures to GDP. In this regard, I think more, if you want, radical, but maybe saying more quicker steps are needed, I think. For instance, if you are speaking about tariffs, tariffs are crucially important. One necessary change, which will be also necessary in the public debate, in the professional debate also in Ukraine, will be not speak about state budget deficit. This is not important. What is only important is public finance deficit. And among public finance deficit, of course, also deficit of Naftogaz and other sectors are. Second important point is that I'm afraid that in Ukraine we don't know, not only what will be deficit, we even don't know what was deficit. Because in reality, even you don't have transparent and strict system of the national accounting, for instance, ESA 95 European system, or now even stricter ESA 2010 system, you don't know what is your deficit. Let me illustrate from my, on the example of my country. We implemented this new transparent and strict system in 2003. And I was in government from 98 to 2006, which means during I was in the government. And we thought, in 2000, we thought, it is written in the statistical books, that our public finance deficit was 3.4%. Then in 2003, we implemented this new system and we recalculated old figures. And we came to conclusion that the real deficit in 2000 was not 3.4%, but 12.3%. Which means I'm afraid that situation is even worse than we think and we calculating now. This means also that one of the necessary priority will be to change as soon as possible this national accounting system and to count not state budget deficit but public finance deficit. And last point, energy tariffs. Of course, this is finally a political decision, and this is difficult decision. Very difficult, very sensitive decision. I completely agree and understand why it is impossible to do during winter, why it is necessary to do after in the spring. But what I'm deeply convinced that it will be much better, not only from economic point of view, but also from the political point of view, to do not during 2 years in 3 steps, but the best way in 1 step. We have to recognize that in Ukraine, it means not doing, deregulation in 1 year, but in 25 years. Because nothing was done during last 25 years. And now dividing it in 3 steps will bring, of course, costs and will postpone real macroeconomic stabilization and fiscal consolidation. From the political point of view, it is of course very difficult, but do you think it will be easier a year from now and 2 years from now to do this 2nd and 3rd step? And if you are speaking about necessary compensation, of course it is necessary to compensate it, but the compensation costs only part of the real cost of the subsidy, of the today's subsidized tariffs. And there are a lot of reasons why quicker, development in this direction from economic and political reasons, from the macroeconomic stabilization and fiscal consolidation is necessary. Of course that it will increase more inflation, but in short term. And if monetary policy will be responsible and restrictive enough, then it will be only limited period. And let me conclude by saying this. In Czechoslovakia, when we started transition in 1991, from the beginning of the year, it was done price liberalization and all prices, of course, and inflation increase was 60%, 63% in 2-3 months. But then, because restrictive monetary policy of the National Bank, it was stopped because aggregate demand came to the ceiling of the shortage of money, and inflation was stabilized. My question is today's situation in Ukraine less needed or dramatic for this kind of changes? I think this is also a reason why I think it could be much better and also politically reasonable and maybe also politically clever to do it as soon as possible. Of course, this agreement with IMF is kind of framework, which is at least necessary measures which have to be done in this area, and it is up to government, officially up to energy regulator, but of course it will be political decision how to do it. Which means my suggestion could be to do it as soon as possible, and not only tariff changes, but all necessary measures for macroeconomic stabilization, fiscal consolidation, and banking cleaning. And last point, we did in 1999-2000, we recovered and restructured banking sector. 3 biggest state-owned banks at that time in Slovakia were on the edge of collapse. It costed us 12% of GDP, which means it was huge, very costly, but it was very successful, very quick, and we have also experience with this bad assets management and selling and so on, which means we can speak also about this. Thank you.
Sorry, we should move really fast. And now I would like to turn to the audience and to launch once again the voting as we had yesterday. So take your remote devices, please. There will be a couple of questions so that we understand your mood today. Okay, is the system ready? People don't have the devices. You have device, good.
No, hands. Yeah, they can use hands.
Oh, okay. No, we cannot count actually hands.
But we will see the majority.
Yeah, let's see. So the assistants will give you devices if you don't have them. Yeah, a couple of good assistants here in the first row. Okay, let's start with the first question. So basically, what do you think, as a foreign investor, what do you think is the biggest obstacle to the economy now, to its growth and development? Is it very poor energy efficiency, which hopefully will be tackled in some way? Is it the lack of respect of the rule of law, or entrenched vested interest, the lack of credibility of political elite, or military conflict in the East? So once the voting starts, can we start the voting? Yes, you can make your choice now. Please do it. A, B, C, D, or E. So the list is not really inclusive, but these are the most critical issues that we see. Okay, now we have the results. Yeah, I think that not many people still have the devices, but anyway, from what we see now is still the lack of respect of the rule of law and the conflict, right? So even the lack of rule of law has the biggest share. So basically, we had similar results last year. So it seems that we can deal with the conflict, but this is what's critical. The next question is. Can we have the next question on the screen, please? And so based on what was said yesterday and what is said now, when do you expect Ukraine's economy to return to sustainable growth? Is it already next 2 years, or it will take 3 or 4 years, or maybe more than 5 years? Or we will still be kind of in very volatile and unsustainable environment for foreseeable future? Yes, please make your choice. We'll see how optimistic are you today about Ukraine. Oh, good. Yeah. Sorry?
I said it's in line with our forecast.
That's good. We should meet in 3 months and check again. Yeah. And the last question will be about the most sensitive issue about currency. So what do you think, where we will see the hryvnia 1 year from now, devalued further? Is it will stabilize, will be close to the current level, or will it strengthen at least a little bit? So let's start the voting, please. Yes, it is. It is started. Make your choice. It's easy, only 3 options. So what are the results? Well, okay. It's almost equally divided between stabilization and further devaluation, but some people, expect some appreciation. Very good, and see that this question was really the one that most of you voted, at least participated. So.
Years or so to bring in the various reforms that are foreseen in that program, and so that's the sort of time period that I think I'm looking at when I'm thinking about the way in which Ukraine will develop in the future years. What is very important, as has already been said, is of course that what has changed in the last 12 months is that Ukraine, both at political level but also at the level of the public, have shown a clear commitment to achieve the goals that are set out in that program. So there is a clear ownership of the path towards Europe, if you like. What is very important, of course, is that in order to achieve the reform package that is set out in the association agreement, and in particular in the deep and comprehensive free trade area, is that some fundamentals need to be addressed in order for those reforms to work. In order to improve the business climate, in order to start to see growth, particularly to see small businesses developing and growing, which is where most growth will come from, to see innovation, all of those things. I think that you need some fundamentals in place. The first of those fundamentals is peace. The second is macroeconomic stability, which has been discussed in some detail this morning, and of course we're fully supportive of the IMF package, which we hope will lead to that. But there are some other fundamental issues as well, and that is tackling corruption. I think I'm the first person to use that word this morning, but you have to use it. You have to, looking at the vote just now, it is clear that one of the concerns, one of the highest concerns amongst the public here was the rule of law. Corruption is one element of that, but also tackling the judicial system. So that if you want to encourage foreign investors to come back into this country, you have to protect their rights, you have to protect their property, and you have to give them confidence that the court system is independent enough and that the rule of law is sufficient enough for them to invest in confidence. At the moment, I don't think we have that situation. So these, I think, are some fundamental issues. And then the reform program that the government has already put forward, which again is all part of the reforms that are foreseen within the association agreement, will gradually see a move, I think, to make Ukrainian businesses more competitive, to improve the business climate and investment climate. We'll start seeing investment coming back in. And, as I said, crucially, to encourage growth by giving entrepreneurs the confidence that they can establish businesses, that they can manage businesses and allow them to grow in an environment which gives them confidence for the future. But some of these fundamental things that I mentioned at the beginning have to be in place for us to be confident. So I haven't quite answered your question in that I think there are still a number of unanswered questions. I can be optimistic at one end of the spectrum and see that with a successful IMF program, with all of the goodwill and money that is coming into the country from the different international financial institutions, including also from the EU, with all of that, with the spirit of the Ukrainian people to move forward, we can see the implementation of all of these reforms leading to Ukraine being in a much better position in 5 or 7 years' time than it is today. At the other end of the spectrum, of course, if some of these fundamental issues, corruption, the conflicts in the East, macroeconomic stability, if some of these issues are not tackled quickly and continue to be major problems for Ukraine, then of course that recovery and that optimistic scenario is going to take much longer to develop. If I may, I also wanted to ask a question to Mrs. Gontareva about the financial sector reform, briefly, because we are also very supportive of what the bank is doing in the financial sector. We think that the reform is heading in exactly the right direction. I'm not sure I am so confident that we're at the end of the process yet, because I think that in order to see a successful reform in the financial sector, it would be, we need to see banks starting to lend again. Access to finance is vital for businesses. That is a major problem for them at the moment. Indeed, there's not even very much interbank lending going on. So I think that will be the test of this. Of course, a lot has been said about the Deposit Guarantee Fund assisting recapitalization. But of course, the first people for the private banks, at least, to be tackled are the private owners and the big private investors. And so I'd just be interested to hear from Mrs. Gontareva how you feel your discussions have gone with some of the major private investors who I think should also be asked, in fact first asked, to put their hands into their pockets and to help to recapitalize some of the big private banks.
As I already told you, with all biggest 35 banks, we already agreed the recapitalization program. It means that they committed, they started to provide their capital. That's why I even said that 53% of the capital was already injected. And we still have a program till the 1st of July of this year. That's why everything in process. In case this shareholder not perform well, and for example, or we do not believe that it's a really sustainable situation here, and we could not, because if we not believe that solvency is there or will be there and business will be viable, like a lender of a last resort could not help this bank with liquidity. And you know that when this bank's run happened also not yesterday. The bank's run started from 2013. In October, November, well, all this revolution started. And last year it was absolutely incredible. And the Ukrainian banking system lost right now more than 30% of private individual deposits. In foreign currency, it's already 40%. It's absolutely incredible. That's why it's absolutely difficult. Of course, we could support bank with some liquidity only when we believe that their capitalization plan will be there, and where they provided not only commitment but real injection of foreign currency. When we are talking about lending, it's very difficult to imagine how banks start right now to lend to the real sector, because NPLs right now it's like went through the roof. It's absolutely incredible because of this war, because of devaluation. That's why I explained how was that all this stress scenario, recapitalization, it's only one part. It's a part of remedy of legacy. Right now, we cannot clean up, we recognize all problem of devaluation and problem of Donetsk, Donbass, and Crimea. after we recognize all this problem, we really clean up and set up their targets for their capital adequacy ratio up to 4 years. And only in this time, because right now, if you observe all Ukrainian banking system, you can ask about how sustainable what's their real solvency ratio could be, you know. That's why it's also program. And, but even last year, for example, a lot of people blamed us now that we really increased dramatically our key refinancing rate. Because you know what kind of business should be to finance if our refinancing rate right now 19.5. But last year, when our key rate was only 12, and in November we increased it to 14, I can tell you that loan portfolio of Ukrainian bank decreased by 10%. Means no one like to finance, to provide loans to economy. First of all, economy is in decreasing mood. The second one, all these NPLs because of all these problems with, again, with economy, with rate, with macro. And you already mentioned all our legal and judicial system problems. That's why we need to protect the rights of creditors, the rights of banks. And we are now stressing all this legislation about creditors' rights. Because it's crucial. More to that, you cannot even think about interbank connection and lending, because when in such a turmoil, banks stop to provide lending even to each other. Right now, National Bank, it's like a facilitator and mediator somewhere, because we provide refinancing to some banks, and we, in the same time, we absorb liquidity through our deposit certificates from the other hand. Right now, Ukrainian banking system has more than 30 billion hryvnia of spare liquidity. Means it's incredible amount. Even right now, when we discuss with Minister of Agri Minister, he said that even for right now, for all this spring season, we need about 12, 11 billion hryvnia of financing, additional financing for agri sector. And our banks right now have more than 30 billion in spare liquidity. Means that confidence is not there. And it's the main problem. But it's step by step, you know. When we clean up system, when they start to believe that the sector is more or less clean up and capitalized properly, they start to do that. But macro stability, that's why when I heard what Ivan said, I said maybe Ivan also could be advisor for IMF to explain them that maybe how it's better to advise us, you know, because you advise absolutely great. According to Ukrainian proverb, it's better not to cut the tail of cat by pieces. It's better to cut the tail once.
So, Ivan, you are in a big demand now. But yeah, I would like to actually move the discussion a little bit to the real sector and to address the next question to Sevki, because you're the biggest, really, the investor to private companies here, and your mandate, as far as I understand, is quite wide, and the amount that actually is planned to be invested in Ukraine is quite big. As far as I remember, the package announced by the EU back in April last year envisaged about 5 billion euro from the EBRD for next 5 years. Yeah. So, I mean, there is lack of bank lending, so the companies don't have resources to develop. You probably see the big demand for your resources. How basically, where do you see the private sector now? How the company are surviving? Which are the sectors that you are investing in, and how much you invested basically last?
I think just to say that on that 5 billion commitment, we made quite a headway with 1.2 billion last year in 2014. But I think you're bringing the debate to, I think, what is probably critical, taking it down from the macro discussions that have been going on. And I, for one, somewhat frustrated over just pure focus on macro and not bringing down to micro level, to the enterprise level, because without the enterprises, all these macro numbers are meaningless. And for the enterprise sector to be able to grow, you need to get the banking system functioning again. The adjustment and replenishment of the capital adequacy ratio, in my mind, is just a one-time redress. What is even more important is to set the proper regulatory and supervisory structure to ensure that we're not going to face the same issues in the future again. And clearly, as part of that process, separate the ownership from the management of the banks, i.e. proper governance, proper transparency, and removal of connected party and directed lending, because directed lending is also a fundamental problem in the banking sector as well as connected lending. This needs to be coupled with a very clear industrial policy for each of the major sectors that will drive this country out of the economic doldrums we're facing now. We've been crying about that for the last, probably 14, 16 months that I've been here, at least 18 months. And I think it's time now to elaborate for each of the main sectors a very clear and then coherent and basically pulling it up to a broader industrial and economic strategy for the country. So we have to get down from this high-level thinking also to the nitty-gritty level. What we are seeing is a lot of enterprises, as everybody else is aware, is in some form or another of liquidity and profitability constraint. And that needs to be addressed in the quickest possible way.
Yeah, please, Jerome. You want to tell? No?
Just wanted to comment on the interesting point that Mr. Miklos made. I think there's a lot of merit in shock therapy, and we clearly see the arguments both from a fiscal point of view, from a political economy point of view, and the comparison with the first years of transition is interesting. I mean, it might not be entirely relevant, but it's really an interesting discussion to have, especially considering that in many ways, Ukraine is starting its second transition. And the mere fact that we have this debate on whether to increase tariffs in one go is already a big change. I mean, there was never such a debate in previous years. It was already difficult for us even to convince that there was a need to increase gas and heating tariffs at all. So this is also a reflection that I think, just to see the positive side of it, it's a reflection that things are changing, that the fact there is this debate. But I think also we need to take into consideration a number of things. First is, of course, the ownership. You might, and it's also very important for us, because without ownership there won't be commitment. And on measures which are so difficult, we need to have ownership not only in Naftogaz, but also in other parts of the government, in other parts of the actors. We'll have to implement that. There are also some considerations on, for such potentially dramatic increase. I mean, if you go to cost recovery, people have to understand that it means increasing a tariff by 6 or 7 times. For such a move, you also need to make sure that when you demand such an effort from the population, you also need to make sure that the compensation mechanisms are in place and the social system is adequate to fulfill that, especially in a difficult context that we have now. When you ask for such sacrifices from the population, you also have to make sure that they see that the efforts that they are making are not going to an opaque system, which is, the energy sector in Ukraine is very opaque, and they still need a lot of changes in terms of governance. And it also goes with an improvement in payment discipline. There is no tariff or price reform without an improvement in payment discipline, and that is also something that will be is one of the commitments of the authorities is to make sure that Naftogaz, in particular, is able to collect the receivables that it has with some companies. Payment discipline has been a big issue, not so much with households, but with the corporate sector, and that is also part of the equation.
Yes, please, small remark, and we will move into question.
Just one small remark. Yeah, I agree that it is about political leadership and decision finally of the Ukrainian leaders. But what we are speaking about, if we are speaking about prolonging the abnormal situation. We are speaking about prolonging, if deregulation will be finally solved only in spring 2017, we are speaking about next 2 years of the subsidizing not only poor, but also rich. Which means, regarding subsidies, of course that it is necessary to compensate for the low-income people, but only for them. And then you will have both. Politically, you will do only once difficult decision. More difficult, but only once. The will and ability of people at the beginning of the accepting necessary changes is much bigger than it will be 1 year later and 2 years ago. Then, second point, that you will have money for this subsidizing, and still it will have positive fiscal consequences if you will do it in one step. Which means, third, lower corruption because regulated prices are a huge source of corruption. Fourth, stronger pressure to necessary restructuring of economy, which is still too dependent on the high consumption of the energy. Fifth, much stronger incentive for isolation of the houses and so on, for overspending, which is huge. Which means I cannot find any argument for postponing this. And I'm, again, not only from the economic point of view, not only from the point of view of fighting against corruption, but also from political point of view. And not speaking about macroeconomic stabilization. I very agree that finally it has to be economy growing on the micro level. But without having macroeconomic stability, it will be simply impossible. And by prolonging this key decision, I'm afraid that we are prolonging also time for creating real macroeconomic stability.
Support Ivan. It was my long discussion with IMF, because even for saving exercise, for our balance of payment, it's extremely needed that everybody in this country understands that they should save their gas, electricity, and everything. Because otherwise, you know, when in our apartments the average temperature is 35 degrees, when in Europe it's 18. And it's crucial to do all of that, and I absolutely agree with all the subsidies. More to that, I can tell you our last year why we lost our reserves. Because we paid, you know, all these arrears to Russia. We paid Eurobond for $1.7 billion. And all other, we paid only Gazprom bills, not only Gazprom, but to Reversal Gas, to Sanoil Gas, but not only Gazprom, but all NAK Naftogaz bills. It's absolutely incredible bills. They need to decrease dramatically their consumption everywhere, you know. And that's why to be you know, highest price for everybody means savings. It's automatically.
I fully agree that, you know, as I mentioned, it's a balance of payment problem as well. And the price is energy, basically.
It's okay, it's really a very hot issue, but actually some investors were lucky that you repaid Naftogaz, I think, and give them an opportunity to ask a couple of questions. We have like 10 or 15 minutes for questions. Yes, let's start from the front. Rob, please.
I got a question for the governor.
Can you please present yourself?
Yeah, sure. My name is Redwan Mirwani. I have a question for the governor. Yesterday we were informed that you supported Finance and Credit Bank that obviously failed to for the stress test you mentioned earlier. And at the same time, we all know as foreign investors that Nadra Bank and VA Bank were put into receivership, that they all of them had outstanding Eurobonds. And I just wanted to understand the logic of support and not supporting.
First of all, we provided liquidity like a lender of a last resort. We provided liquidity. We are not a safe bank because we are not a saver. You know, we provided like a national bank. We do not inject any capital. We do not do any nationalization. That's why safe. It's we help them with liquidity. Why we decided to help them with liquidity? And only liquidity is 700 million hryvnia. And only for repayment of private individual deposits. It's only to cover all the part of private individual deposits which they lost recently. It's only to support liquidity. Why we did that? Because after recognition of their capital needs, a shareholder injected already 500 billion hryvnia recently. He also helped his bank, he decreased the leverage of his bank for partially for his insider portfolio, because it was a strong requirement from the national bank. That's why he did in line, absolutely in line with our requirements. And more to that, he to be able to provide liquidity to any bank in this country, we need a valuable collateral. And right now we introduce absolutely brand new procedure in our country, and only Big Four or DTZ or Colliers evaluator like that could be accepted by the National Bank, because believe me, before under refinancing of the National Bank, you could imagine what kind of assets I can find in this storage. And that's why we really support the bank who committed and who perform according to his commitment. For example, about the Nadra bank, it's a different story. A problem of Nadra bank was not happened yesterday. It's happened 7 years ago, in 2008. Unfortunately, this bank could not recover since then. And it was absolutely huge capital gap which they need to inject. More to that, they should refinance the absolutely huge amount of refinancing which were provided to them during from 2008 till 2010. It's not the fresh story. It's old history of this bank. That's why, unfortunately, this bank was not viable even to consider to survive. We try to help, and their shareholders also try to help, but the gap was absolutely huge for survival. That's why everybody agreed that we could not, they could not help, they could not provide capital according to their commitments. VEB Bank, it's a third story, because the biggest problem of this bank, it was absolutely Ukrainian classical scheme of oligarch banking paradigm and oligarch banking concept. Because what's the scheme of oligarch banking concept? You really absorb all money from private individuals in these countries, from babushka, from students, from everybody, small, absolutely smart deposits. Even DGF fund cover 99% of private individual deposits in this bank. Could you imagine? By number, yeah. And by amount, it also, private individual deposits were in the amount of 11 billion, and the DGF fund covered 10 billion. Means also like, you know, more than close to 90%. Absolutely incredible amount. But by number of customers, private individuals, it was 99. And what these shareholders did with all this money? he spent all this money to related business, to related transactions. 73% of his portfolio was truly invested to his own business. And when we start, even in the summertime, we start to discuss, of course, we recognize, we know it's happened, it's not only your problem, all these related party transactions. Please start to do the leverage, and please repay back, please decrease, please sell some of your assets and inject capital. Unfortunately, shareholders failed to deliver all his promises. That's why it was not a systemic bank, and it went to DGF.
Thank you for a very good explanation. We have one question in the back, and then we will move forward, please.
Okay, good day. My name is Yuri Polishuk, Tepelin company. We are the biggest importer of wireless equipment to Ukraine. I have a question to Governor. On 22nd of January, you have announced that National Bank of Ukraine is starting practical realization of a swap line between China and Ukraine in Chinese yuan and hryvnia. And unfortunately, till today, the swap line hasn't been practically realized. And reasonably, I have a question. When we can expect the first transfer in the first payment in Chinese yuan? Thank you very much.
It's already realized. When I announced this line, it was already done. We activated this line. We got 15 billion renminbis to our account. But you know, maybe how Chinese are doing business, everything it's not maybe as quickly as we'd like to see. And last year, a delegation from Central Bank visited Public Bank of China and agreed about all these conditions, because this line, it's special line dedicated to our trade finance facilitation line. But finally, we also reached an agreement that partially we can exchange unutilized part of this line. Of course, the first item of this line, it's a trade related, but partially we can exchange this onshore renminbi for offshore renminbi. But when you have offshore renminbi, you have a possibility to exchange it for any other convertible currency. But again, it's not a priority for us. Priority for us, it's a trade related business. And we announced to all Ukrainian banks, we have a special presentation for them, because National Bank do not provide trade finance to Ukrainian banks. That's why when Ukrainian banks are ready, when their customers are ready, we are ready, because our renminbi with us already within the National Bank account.
Okay, please, we have a question here in the front row that Sergei wanted to ask long ago.
Thanks. It's Sergei Makin from VR. Couple of questions. Madam Governor, do you plan to...
One per person, please. We choose the most important.
No, you're really kind of making me two, if I may. So, factual. Madam Governor, do you plan to introduce foreign currency repo after the program is, the IMF program is kind of enforced to help banks with their foreign currency liquidity needs? And Jerome, Madam Minister said yesterday that you do not plan to include domestic debt in the debt operation. What kind of rollover rates do you assume for domestic foreign currency denominated debt? And Ivan, question to you. I'm just abusing the microphone. Yes. A question to you as an advisor to the ministry. Would you advise them to include quasi-sovereign debt in the debt operation, or you think it is too risky given potential implications for the banking system?
Okay, let me intervene. I would give floor to Valeria, and rest of you'll be able to ask during the coffee break, which will start soon. So please, with repo.
We're not going to do any foreign currency repo with Ukrainian banks. It's not, frankly speaking, I observe very interesting how Nabiullina did this currency repo. But first of all, the time when she started to do that, it was absolutely $500 billion US in their reserves. Unfortunately, Ukraine, you know, our reserves, it's not there. That's why we are not going to do. But unfortunately, it didn't help even Nabiullina.
Governor, I'm Isaac Schwartz. I was wondering, Are there any rules regarding the use of foreign currency at the moment? Because I was stopped at the airport and I was asked how much foreign currency I had on me. And I was also wondering, do you believe that some of the current difficulties have been further stressed by speculative elements in the market? Or do you believe that the depreciation truly is related to just the economic conditions and to fear? And if you believe there's some speculative elements, could you elaborate, please? Thank you.
Well, probably the customs guards expect that you can support reserves a little bit.
Yeah, of course, I'm absolutely strange because how I can imagine that the same question will be asked when you are leaving our country, but when you really come in, it's something absolutely, funny. And about our administrative measures which we introduce. What kind of ammunition central bank could have in their life? We use all of them, believe me. And if we see still that situation in the forex market is difficult, you can imagine what kind of measures we can take further to stabilize the system. But we do not want to take any further administrative measures. Because right now it's absolutely incredible measures. First of all, it's a 75% of mandatory sale of our exported proceeds. It's incredible. It's 75% still with us. It's a limitation even for withdrawal of some foreign currency deposits for private population. It's a limitation of withdrawals of local currency deposits in bigger amounts in foreign currency, but still there. It's a still prohibition to pay dividends, royalty, and which is absolutely killer for business. But it's a measure, administrative measure, with National Bank taken before to stop all this panic and all this, absolutely incredible volatility. What else we can do? Because, with the level of our reserves, we cannot do massive intervention. But in the same time, we do daily intervention. And right now, when we announce that we have a flexible rate, it's flexible, it's not yet fully convertible Ukrainian hryvnia, it's not a free float because of these administrative measures. More today, we do our daily intervention on the market rate to NAK Naftogaz. Because if you see NAK Naftogaz on the market with their $500 million US per month, you can imagine what kind of rate will be there. That's why all what you observe right now, it's absolutely, it should be calm situation, because without NAK Naftogaz, absolutely clear that it should be surplus in our foreign exchange market. And what we do else? We increase dramatically our key refinancing rate to 19.5. What else? It's all national bank have. That's why when we are talking about further administrative measure, we decided that IMF support and not only program but support also from all other donors right now should bring stability to our market. And it's only some behavioral panic behavior and nothing fundamental, like I said before.
Thank you. We have a time for one last question, please, because we are running out of time.
I have a short follow-up question to this. Provided the board, IMF board approves the program and so on, what would be the plan for removing this administrative or quasi-administrative measures, such as limitation on transferring dividends from hryvnia into dollars and some others which you just mentioned?
We should decide what we'd like to achieve, stabilization or repayment of dividend. It's better for us to wait a little bit when situation will be calm and stable enough to repatriate dividends, or our idea to agree for repatriation of dividends. Could you imagine what kind of dividends collected our very respected foreign investors, for example, in these mobile operators? Could you imagine? You can imagine what kind of influence it will have to our account, what kind of rate we could achieve because of their active participation in the market. Right now, I hope that they will spend a lot of money for 3G license, and it will be more easier for us to take this decision. But of course, when situation will be stable, I am the first supporter, and it's my dream to eliminate all these administrative measures.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you to everyone on this panel. It was very good and insightful discussion. And I would like to remind to our audience that you return your voting devices when you leave the hall, so that means the assistant will collect them from you. Thank you.